Sorry about that. Can we get back to where we were?
Yeah.
So let's just focus a little bit more. Is anybody getting a name, perhaps?
Listen, Jim, what I want you to...
I've been hearing like noise, like footsteps above my room. It's definitely the attic, not like the upstairs neighbours. It's really freaky.
Rob, go up there now and actually have a look.
Before its transformation into a feature film, Host began as a prank video made by director Rob Savage, in which he tricked his friends into believing he'd been attacked by an entity during a Zoom chat.
I don't like it, Rob. Holy shit, he's not moving at all.
That is incredible! How did you do that?
The video was then uploaded to YouTube at the start of the year and went viral. With the prank video gaining millions of views within the first week, the roving eyes of Hollywood were soon lining up offers for a longer version of the film. But with most theaters closed and nowhere to show the movie, the only option left for getting the film made ended up being with streaming services. Enter Shudder, who not only loved this concept, but supported his goal of wanting to get the movie made and released as soon as possible.
A happy seance?
Yeah, happy spookies.
Happy spookies.
Made over 12 weeks during lockdown, the film born out of this adds a unique spin to the supernatural possession formula by exploiting our overdependence on the digital world to keep us connected. With a running time of 57 minutes, on paper, the plot of Host is standard horror fare, and the technique of telling a story through video conferencing is nothing new. The Unfriended films did this a few years ago with far less success, and found footage films generally already employ similar tactics. But it's the context in which Host is set, and the skill with which the storytelling is handled despite its constraints that enhances its potency. In short, the story follows 6 good friends, Haley, Gemma, Regina, Emma, Caroline and Teddy, who get together every week in a Zoom meeting during the early days of lockdown as a way of keeping in touch with each other. Everything that we see within the narrative is intuitively framed within the Zoom format and through the perspective of the webcams the group are using. Each week, one of them chooses an activity for the group to participate in, and this week it's Haley's turn. Bored of the standard movie, quiz and game nights, Haley arranges for a psychic named Salen to conduct an electronic seance with the group instead, as all great friends do. Before being introduced to the medium, each of the friends is asked to bring a trigger object, something that's emotionally connected to a deceased pet, friend, or relative they'd like to communicate with. They're also informed that the laws that govern our reality don't apply to the astral plane, so if they needed to speak with someone or something that, say, didn't speak English, they would still be able to understand each other perfectly. Salen is then invited to the meeting, and though she gives off calm vibes, she warns them that they're in uncharted waters, as this was her first seance over Zoom. After insisting that they be respectful to whatever spirits they may encounter, she points out that because of this new space and her inability to control it with traditional practices, they were essentially more vulnerable than usual. As they start the ritual, Teddy's girlfriend interrupts them, forcing him to leave, and unfortunately, despite Salen warning them not to speak falsehoods as they not only insulted spirits, but also allowed them to become a manifestation of those lies, Gemma makes a dick move by lying about making contact with a boy named Jack that she knew from school.
Do you know anyone called Jack who's passed?
Yeah. The kid from school?
The group are then plagued by bizarre occurrences in their homes, manipulated by an unknown entity, whom they all believe to be Jack, beginning with the removal of Salen from the chat. And although Gemma admits that she made it all up to her friends, with no one to protect them, it starts toying with them further, first dragging Haley across the room, causing the lights to flicker and shattering glass, before things start taking a more gruesome turn.
I've done it a few times and it is really cool,
Does anything ever happen?
Yeah.
It's important to note that we're deliberately misled into believing that the seance was the catalyst for the events that unfolded, as in truth, although it is a major event, we're actually joining the story at the very end, and the inciting incident of the entire narrative actually occurs prior to the film starting. At the very beginning, it's established that Haley, who came up with the idea for the group to do an online seance, had done something similar in the past. It's even hinted that her home was haunted prior to the seance. Because Haley had initiated contact with the entity in the astral plane, and potentially even created it, in a process we'll go through shortly, this formed an unbreakable bond between her and the entity. Despite her returning from the astral plane after making first contact, it stayed with her, something she was becoming aware of. While admittedly selfish, the reason she wanted to do this seance was to reach out to the entity and find out what it wanted, whilst among the safety of friends. Little did she know that the entity was actually orchestrating a strategy to inhabit our world by using technology and fear-based tactics. If they'd been sitting in a circle together side by side, as is typical with a traditional seance, Salen would have been able to control the situation and stop it from getting out of hand. The entity, which had been with Haley for some time, knew this, which is why the first thing it did after they'd opened the door was get rid of Salen. But according to the director himself, as easy as it is to lay the blame on Gemma, Salen and Haley, they couldn't have accomplished this alone because the entity terrorizing the group was actually something called a tulpa, a presence summoned when a group of people imagine the same entity at the same time. The concept of tulpas stems from the mystical practice of collective thought forms found in Tibetan Buddhism, specifically a practice through which monks would create a mental construct designed to appear as an autonomous, sentient entity to the practitioner. Similar to mnemonics and other mental tools designed to help with memory, the idea is that the creation of tulpas allows a practitioner to employ a similar method of mind over matter. For example, if a monk had a fear of spiders, the tulpa they created, which was either with or without a physical form, might approach a spider without fear, or through another exercise would demonstrate how pointless this fear was, thus enabling the monk to overcome their initial trepidation. A similar principle applies here, and the entity which eviscerated the group was initially without form when Haley had reached out to it, and potentially even created it during a previous seance. Gemma's lie during the virtual seance functioned like an open invitation, but it's the shared thought forms of everyone in the group that enabled it to use the images of Jack in their minds as a mask to gain a physical form, and become an autonomous entity of carnage in our reality. This is confirmed when Salen calls them back, and the group revealed that Gemma had lied about the boy, leading Salen to posit that the prank had likely invited a spirit that was starting to take the guise of Jack to play with them. And play it did, with many of their deaths being foreshadowed at the start, indicating that the entity was observing them prior to the seance, which is also how it could haunt them by recreating what they manifested. We see it terrorizing Emma by taking the form of video filter effects she was using at the start. It uses Caroline's recording of herself that she used at the beginning to manipulate the group into thinking she was fine when she was actually dying. And of course, Gemma's made-up friend is used against her and the rest of the group, as is the online seance Haley initiated. But perhaps the best example of this can be seen in Teddy's death. Prior to the seance, Teddy shows the group his trigger object, an old creepy music box that belonged to his grandmother and used to scare him as a child. More importantly, as he reveals it to them, he blows smoke on it, foreshadowing his end when he's chased into the garage by the entity and finds the same music box before bursting into flames. By the end, the entity is so powerful that it drops its Jack persona altogether, and we get a true glimpse of the evil that they'd welcomed here. In the chaotic third act, as the group become more terrified and the entity gains strength in our reality, it begins picking them off in full view of everyone in the video chat, before finally attacking Gemma and Haley after the former escaped her home and attempted to save her friend. If we consider that the entity was a tulpa created by Haley, or at least first summoned by her, and it was able to gain a physical form thanks to the online seance performed by the group, it's safe to assume that after killing everyone involved, it was no longer tethered to Haley, and by the end, it was now free to do as it wanted in the astral plane, our reality, and of course, now also virtual reality.
You not looking forward to it? I'm a bit nervous.
I'm absolutely shitting it.
Why?
I really don't want to do it.
It'll be fine.
Putting together an hour-length film in 12 weeks from conception, principal photography, post-production to delivery was an incredible achievement, made all the more astonishing when you realize that due to restrictions, Savage had to not only direct the actors remotely, but also had to instruct them on how to set up their lighting, cameras, and audio equipment, in addition to choreographing each of their stunts and practical effects. Its micro-budget is to be expected when you consider the genre, but the experience doesn't feel cheap or look like it was filmed in a hurry, something it shares with The Wretched, another excellent horror film made on a similar shoestring budget. While the setting does take advantage of the socially distant world that has become our norm, and our growing dependency to try and use digital communication to fill the void caused by this, Host is no cheap cash-in, and it's impressive to see what Savage created with a dedicated group of terrific actors, a couple of webcams, and a decent script. With that having been said, that's all for today, folks. Don't forget to hit subscribe and click the notification icon to stay up to date on all my content, and if there's anything else you'd like to request, please don't hesitate to ask. As always, it's been a pleasure. Niyat here with Film Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.